Yes. Okay. Now everyone, we're recording. Tom, I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
Go back. Go back and say.
No problem at all. Did you want to share? Okay, great. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
So my name is Tom Millar. I work for the city's transportation division, and we're going to be improving Sunnyside Avenue just a little bit. And let me kind of tell you the types of projects that we usually do. We either do a chip seal or a slurry seal when the road's in pretty good shape, but it just needs to lengthen its life a little bit. And that chip seal or slurry seal is just a real thin layer that goes on top of the existing road, but it doesn't require any digging. It's not replacing the asphalt. It's just adding another layer to prolong the life by about 5 or 7 years when we come and do it again. So before we add that layer, you may have seen our crews out there. They apply a tar material to all of the cracks, and that helps to preserve the roadway a little bit longer. And then we put the chip seal on top. So once we put the chip seal on top, we kind of have a blank slate. And that blank slate allows us to fix any problems with the striping, the paint, the lane lines that are on the road. And that's what I'm here today to ask you all about, as you are all much more familiar with Sunnyside Avenue, this section of Sunnyside Avenue than anybody else. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing it between Foothill and the city limit, which is about a half a mile up the canyon, and kind of where all of those Salt Lake County signs start is where the city's project will end. We'll be doing this in the late summer, probably August, and that temperature allows us to get a better bond between the chip seal and the existing roadway. So we're going to be keeping the same number of lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. We'll be keeping the center turn lane, and we'll be keeping the bike lanes, but we'd like to make anything about the road any better through the use of paint or that new chip seal surface. So I wanted to get all of your ideas. Are there any problem intersections? Crestview Drive, Arapine, any of the intersections in between that we could do something to improve the safety or the comfort or the usability. That's the kind of feedback that I want to get from you guys tonight. So I'll just open it up to what feedback you have.
Tom, this is Councilmember Dugan.
Hey.
I know we've had some concerns about the striping on the westbound lanes at the Foothill and Sunnyside. There's some concerns. I'll have to look for the emails on what they were. I think it has to do with the left-hand turn lane and how long that left-hand turn lane is. And others. It's a Sunnyside East member, and let me see if I can find the email about that one.
That'd be great. Thank you, Dan. Any other ideas or comments?
There was a question about how long the road is out of service for people who need to drive on it.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. It's usually just a few days, and it's never completely out of service. Usually we'll do 1/2 at a time so that we can keep traffic moving in both directions just on a single lane. But the way it goes down is actually it's pretty cool. I think that I guess that's why I'm a transportation planner, because I find this stuff cool. A thin layer of oil goes down first, and it goes down in like 8 to 10 foot wide stripes. And then we add a layer of rock, really small rock, and then another layer of oil goes on top of that to keep it in place. So the drying time usually on the first round of oil is kind of negligible because we just put the rock right on top of that. It's really the drying time of the second round that matters, and that's usually not very long, a few hours to a day. But sometimes there's a gap in between when we put the rock down and when we put the final layer of oil down, so that we can get the rock settled as much as possible. It's not sticking up. It lays flatter if we allow people to drive on it for a second before we put down that final layer. So if you live on Sunnyside, you'll be getting a flyer on your doorstep or on your doorknob telling you when it would start, any possible impacts that it would have to your driveway. And again, that would only be for a few hours to a day or so.
Hey, Tom, this is David Lita. I
Hi.
think it's a great project. I'm enthusiastic. But my only comments about striping are these. Since I bike up that road a bit, there might be, I'm going by memory, there might be inconsistencies in the width of the bike lanes,
Yeah, you're
particularly
correct.
as they go up past the zoo. And also westbound, I think there's some inconsistencies with the bike lanes, and there also are some irregularities in the surface of those bike lanes, which can be a problem for bikers going up and down the canyon. With respect to striping, though, one thing I would like to see, and maybe beyond this project, is I'd like to see a crosswalk that goes across Sunnyside at the intersection of Sunnyside and Wasatch Drive. Or maybe it's not Wasatch, maybe it's
Crestview, I think.
Crestview. It's the one that goes up past the zoo on the east side of the zoo.
And then connects to Wasatch.
And then
yeah.
connects into Wasatch. The reason for that is there's a parking area that is on the north side of Sunnyside where people park and hike up along the shoreline trail. It'd be really nice if that were paved, but that may be on the budget. But it's a bit hazardous if you're walking to cross Sunnyside at that intersection to get to the shoreline trail. And if there could at least be a crosswalk and maybe an alert sign for motorists that pedestrians could be in the crosswalk, I think that would enhance safety.
Thank you, David. Yeah, let me speak to that a little bit. And you're right, it does go a little bit beyond this project, but we have very imminent plans to make improvements as you have suggested. Currently, there are only 2 crosswalks between Foothill and the city limit, which is almost 2 miles of Sunnyside Avenue. There's only 2 crosswalks, which is crazy. At the zoo and at the intersection with Airpine Drive. There are a few projects that are in the pipeline that will come after this resurfacing, is what we call it. One will be to close the free right turn at Foothill, that really wide, fast free right turn. It doesn't serve as much traffic as it used to, and it's a very serious safety risk. And so we're working with UDOT to see if we can close that down and then just create a small right turn lane for people that need to turn right on Foothill. Potentially rehabbing the concrete at that Foothill Drive intersection. You may notice that it's very choppy and rough as you approach that, especially if you're on a bicycle. We will be extending the trail that exists on the north side of Sunnyside Avenue by the student housing, extending that up to This Is the Place within the next few years. And then, as you mentioned, and that trail extension will include a new crosswalk at 2300 East. And then, as you mentioned, up by the Bonneville Shoreline Trail trailhead, our public lands divisions are working on improving that trailhead and adding a new trailhead parking lot just up the street, just up the canyon slightly, a couple hundred feet. And that would potentially include a new crosswalk there at Crestview as well. So potentially doubling the number of crosswalks on Sunnyside and definitely improving the facilities that you were talking about. And then the last thing that I'll say is that in our very cursory review of what our potential designs could be on Sunnyside, we see that there is quite a bit of pavement left over, even keeping both lanes in each direction with a center turn lane, and that we will be able to get wider and more consistent width of the bike lanes going up and down the canyon, so that you don't have to drive right next to a bike that's in a real skinny bike lane that's kind of weaving out in and out of utilities and sand and dirt and rocks, and it'll make it a much more comfortable and calmer experience for everybody, we hope.
Tom, I
Thank
have a
you.
question, a really quick
welcome.
question.
Yeah, Diane.
Along the bike lane, when you're biking up or down Sunnyside, there's always a lot of debris on the side. And so after you do this chip seal, are they going to go through and clean up not just the road, but the sides as well? Because when
They
I
will,
have ridden my
yeah.
bike, I always feel like I'm trying to dodge the debris and then going into traffic. So I think
Yeah,
that would also be dangerous.
and they will do that as part of the project. Sometimes that new rock that gets added to the road sometimes has a tendency to come out when it's new and especially when it's warm. So we'll ask them to go back up there with a street sweeper and hit it a couple more times after the project's done, so that none of that kind of residual rock is just sitting there for years and years.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
This is George Chapman. Can I make a couple comments?
Hey, George.
Yeah, we know each other. I hope you reached out to the Immigration Bicycle Group, and if not, I can send you the emails. And MBAC, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, because they need to know about it and have input. And I know what they're going to say. They're going to say that the travel lanes, vehicle lane, should be 11 foot, and the bicycle lane should be 9 feet. And it should not be to the shoulder. It should be closer to the center. In other words, there should be a skinny center turn lane, 11 foot travel lane, and then the 9 foot wide bicycle lane should be right next to it. And the Immigration Canyon folks last year really got screwed, and they need to be involved in this project. They weren't involved last year, and there's a lot of bad blood because of it. So I urge you to reach out to them. And again, if you need the emails, let me know.
Thanks, George. Yeah, in addition to the 3 community councils that this project hits, we're also reaching out to Salt Lake County and the Immigration Township Council. We've also reached out to several bicycle advocacy groups, as well as the county's bicycle advisory committee and the city's bicycle advisory committee, to get their feedback on a potential design. Here's a fun fact. I'm always full of trivia. Sunnyside Avenue, this section of Sunnyside Avenue is the most popular bicycling route in the state. It has the most bicyclists per day on average than any other street in the state. So it is pretty important. And George, I really appreciate that. We've taken great care so far, and will continue to do so, engaging the users that use it most and that would benefit the most from having a safe design.
And Tom, can I
Any other
adopt
ideas
those?
on? Yeah,
Can I adopt those crosswalks?
go
so
for
we
it,
can
Amy.
put flags on them and stuff.
I believe so. Sure. Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
want to
why
send me a
not?
follow-up email and we'll coordinate on that?
Sure. Or I just know how to send the form in. I'll just do it.
Sure. Okay.
And then when
that
you put
sounds
the
good.
new crosswalks in, we'll adopt those too.
Okay.
Make sure you use your very best paint on painting the crosswalks, because pedestrian safety is a huge issue to
I
us.
agree.
It's a priority.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, well, top of the agenda, but you're still here for an hour, so sorry, Tom.
No, that's just fine. If you have any other questions, we're not going to finalize the design for another month or month and a half or so. So if you Google My Street SLC, it will take you to the webpage that has all of the city street projects. And if you just scroll down to about halfway down, it says 2021 surface treatments. And if you click on that, you'll be able to click on Sunnyside, see more of the details, see the designs when they come up. And there's a short little survey on there too. So if you have any other thoughts after the meeting, or you're like, oh, I should drive up there and see if there's anything that needs fixing, feel free to drop us a line or send me an email, and I can put my email in the chat when I'm done.
The website is at the top of that, and we'll put it in our minutes too.
Great.
So
Thank you
see
so
the
much.
website for that specific thing. And Tom, can people email their comments to you directly too?
Yep. I'm the guy.
Great. All right. Thanks. Goodbye.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you. Detective Meinzer, it's your turn. I put up here the crime report that I just put together.
Thank you.
Real quick, this first page is just for the East Bench Community Council, and I put a little map over there so you can see what that includes. We have a couple of, it's half of the golf course and all the way down to the end of as far south as you can get before you're in Parley's Canyon. The next page, this is information just about our community council geography. The next page has the Salt Lake Council District 6. So that's everything that Dan Dugan covers, which is a bunch of other community councils, and there's a map on there so you can see that. So I'll go back to East Bench. And notice car prowls too. We had 2 car prowls in February, so.
I'm not doing anything.
Thank you. Yeah, so I know we're a little bit behind and there's a full agenda tonight, so I'll kind of hurry through and I'll make sure that there's time for questions as well. So specifically, as you know, every month we pull the stats just specifically for your district, or excuse me, your community council area, because it's nice to be able to see what crime you guys are dealing with individually instead of as a whole district. Because right now it's kind of more beneficial to look at each neighborhood as itself instead of just a whole district, because the crime isn't always the same across the board. So in your area, one thing that we identified is there were some car prowls. Obviously, you see in January we had 13 that we had. That's a big number for your area. So our response to that is we gathered all the information that we could with kind of like a heat map and stuff like that. We worked with our CompStat unit and Lieutenant Trost, he's actually on the call here, and he's able to get all that information out to our sergeants in patrol, and they're able to get that to their officers. And the request was to increase the presence when they're in between calls and writing reports to try and deter what they can. On top of that, some of the sergeants even wrote back and gave us timeframes of when they were able to put officers actively patrolling in the neighborhood to track it. So we did a lot of work there to try and reduce the car prowls, and I think it really pays off and shows some results. So that's kind of why that number is so low right now. I wanted to talk about the motor vehicle thefts. So once again, we had 3 this last month in February, just like in January. One thing that I want to bring up is please continue to report suspicious behavior. On Nextdoor, there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't get to see any of that information. Even if someone sends me a link to that, it won't show me of the posts. I'm not a neighbor and they won't let me see anything. So please continue to call it in. There was a guy going around in a vehicle doing some theft, mail theft, things like that, car prowls. And it was all over Nextdoor. And luckily some people forwarded that information to me in the form of taking a photo and sending it to me. That's something that we're very closely tracking. It didn't really affect our area up here on East Bench, but District 6 as a whole, it did. Traffic accidents, please everybody, please pay attention and be careful. As summer comes, we're gonna have more pedestrians, more bike riders. I don't wanna see people getting hit while they're out there. We need to try and do our best to look out for each other. And lastly, the all other offense section where it says 10, I kind of wanted to explain those numbers because that looks like a big number and like a bad thing. It's actually not. So 2 of those was like ambulance calls. So anytime that someone needs an ambulance to come into the area and need some help, officers do go, and we always write a report for that. That's something that's a mandatory report. There was one instance where there was someone that passed away. It wasn't suspicious, anything like that, but that's another number that gets added into that other offense column. There was 2 different instances where there was suspicious activity that was reported that ended up with good, credible information that was documented in reports. So thank you to those people that reported that, because that's very helpful for us. Typically, if we get suspicious information calls and it comes in, if it's not something that has really great, credible information, typically it'll get forwarded along to the appropriate people, and it won't be a very big report. It'll be kind of like a log report. But these 2 specifically are actual reports that are written. So thank you very much for those. And if we go to the next page, and we'll talk about the rest of the district. So as you see, in the whole of District 6, we have been working hard on those larcenies. So not just specifically your area did we send out that information, it was all of District 6. So as you can see, the numbers are down. We're down 10 from last month, which is a great number to see. Makes me very, very happy. Another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is there's been some catalytic converter thefts. So please, if you guys see anybody under cars, things like that, make sure you call it in. Just kind of be aware of that and take care of your neighbors. Look out for each other. So you're kind of aware for that. And I mean, everything else is kind of normal for the numbers. So I don't really want to go into too much detail. We're kind of rushed for time. So I'll kind of open it up for questions at this point, if anyone has any.
Detective, this is Dennis. And at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about response time, and you were going to check in to see if you could get us some historical data for our area.
Yes, so let me pull that up. So I don't have it for just your area. And the reason why is because that's not something that's typically tracked very closely. So we had to have our analysts go through every single call. So I actually have numbers for how we compare to the rest of the districts. So let me pull that up real quick and I will tell you.
Hey, real quick, Detective Meinzer, I asked him about this the other day because a lot of people asked me. There was a low-speed van chase early in the morning last weekend, and it was just a person who was driving under the influence, driving really slow and then honking. So it woke up a lot of people, bothered them at 7 a.m., but that's what it was. It took a while to pull the person over, but that's what it was. So it was okay. Nobody was hurt or anything else suspicious like that. But there was an earthquake 1 year ago at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So that happens. Don't call the cops unless you need to. Anyway.
Okay, so for the response times, we have priority 1 and 2 calls. So those are typically like the life safety calls. So our District 6 response time for priority 1, we are averaging 12 minutes and 11 seconds. And the average for the rest of the city, well, for every district, the average comes out to 12:29. So district, just so you're aware, District 7 is 14:25 and District 5 is 11:38. So that's priority 1s. And our priority 2s, this is where it's like thefts and things like that have occurred and officers are still needing to go and get there, but it's not necessarily like a fight in progress or anything like that. But our average response time number was 25 minutes and 14 seconds. And District 7 was 21 minutes and 54 seconds. So we are above average. The average for that is 18 minutes and 21 seconds. So that's something that our upper administration is aware of and working on. And we have a goal set to reduce those. And let me pull up that goal, because we kind of took a big look overall. So I believe it was a 10% reduction basically as soon as we can. That's our goal, is to reduce that number by 10%. So our division commanders are kind of working out how that works out. And we'll kind of be keeping an eye on those numbers to try and see what we do, if it affects it in a positive way or a negative way. For instance, where we've had all of our officers in their areas as much as possible, obviously that number is going to look great when it comes the next time we run it, but we want to try and see what we can do for long-term results. So if that answers the question.
Yes, maybe you can clarify something for me. I've been told that the response time is calculated in 2 different ways. One person told me it's calculated using the start time when the call is first received until the policeman arrives at the residence. The second one definition was that the start time does not start until a police officer is directed to go to the residence and he turns his wheel to go in that direction, and that is the start time, not the call time.
You know, that's a very good question, and I didn't even ask that, so I don't know if it's one or the other. Lieutenant Trost, do you happen to know the answer to that question?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know if it's the time that the dispatch calls done, but we will certainly find out and get back to you. That's a great question. We do keep track of the time that the call came in, the dispatch time, the officers en route, and then the arrival time. So we'll go ahead and get that definition cleared up for you. I'm not real clear on how dispatch or how we are doing our stats, but we'll find that out and get it to you so you're clear and we have a good definition for you.
Thank you.
Dennis,
Thank
once
you.
I get an answer, I'll just email it to you and I'll also email it to Amy if that's okay.
Sure, thanks.
Hey, if you send it to me soon, we'll put it in the minutes. Of course, the minutes came out a month after the meeting last time, but I mean soon, right? Okay. Hey, and Lieutenant Trost, I want to say that that makes a special effort to get me information to do our crime reports every month, and I really appreciate that. So, thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so happy that he was willing to stay on and be our liaison officer. So
Yeah.
please keep sending us information, both him and I. He reports directly to me. We don't even have a sergeant if it wasn't explained. He reports directly to the command staff of Liberty Division. So he has his office right next to mine. And I dare say we communicate every day about different things in the Liberty Division. And when we get information, for instance, some of those mail thefts and some of the commonalities with the black Audi that was driving around doing porch thefts and stuff, we try to put things together quickly so we can have that response time and actionable items quickly for our patrol officers to actually make a difference instead of a week later. That's not real actionable. I mean, that's way too late. So for instance, that night when I got that email from Janet in the community saying, here's what I just saw. We've had this overnight. I got it to the patrol officers that night, a Friday night, March 5th, and had the graveyard sergeants assign the officers in the area to patrol check. So that's how we're going to stop some of this criminal behavior, and everything you do with your information is valuable and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys, both of you. Okay, thanks. Our next speaker, let's have, is Jamie next, or Jamie, I think you're next.
Awesome. Yeah, I picked my top 3 updates, so we should be able to get through mine quickly and be able to go to Dan. So Amy, I'm glad you brought up the earthquake that occurred last year, March 18th, because I wanted to bring that up to you all as well. I feel like even after 2020, I am still shockingly unprepared for everything that life can throw at us. So I wanted to remind everyone to think about making a plan in the event of an earthquake with your family, at your business. Do you have a meeting place where you're going to meet people if an emergency happens? And also consider making a 72-hour kit. And the city actually has an emergency management division that was extraordinarily busy last year, as you can imagine, but they have a lot of information on their website about making a plan, how to make a kit, what goes in an emergency kit. And I will put a link to that in the chat. So just want to refresh, maybe as like the anniversary of the earthquake, you can all go spend some time on that website and remember what that was like. So that was crazy. I was unprepared. And then on that sort of emergency preparedness front, I wanted to give you guys some COVID updates. So the county right now, we are at a 4% positivity rate, and our ICU utilization in the county is at around 15%. We're seeing a downward trend, and it's because everyone, we're wearing masks. You guys are doing what you need to do and being responsible, which is so great. And I just encourage you all to keep doing what you're doing. We have heard, and everyone has heard, I don't know why I presented it like that, but I'm sure everyone heard that the mask mandate from the state will be lifting on April 10th, and the city is prepared to work with the county to extend that if need be, or to go out on our own and extend it based on the data. So we are still following data as we have been for the entire pandemic. Please keep wearing a mask. Also, all adults can receive the vaccine after April 1st. So that county website Yes, Ed, sorry. I will pause after I'm done with the COVID stuff. So that county website that I showed you last time, I checked it before. Like I said, the website is updated a lot, and I can drop it in the chat here. But it said that the county is not currently taking appointments for people 50 and over who weren't previously eligible. So if you are newly eligible 50 and over but weren't eligible before, you might have to wait with the county until that April 1st date to make an appointment. But I have heard that some people have been able to get into Walgreens and Smith's to make an appointment if you're 50 and under. So anyway, keep tabs on that. And let's see if we can get everyone vaccinated. Ed, you had a comment about the earthquake.
Yes, Jamie. I am the past president of for the state for Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. It's known as VOAD. And I teach a class called No One's Coming for You. And no one's coming for you because people have, they think that a fire engine is going to show up in front of their house after an earthquake, and that's not going to happen. But I talk about how to do a go bag, how to get all of that put together. It's been sanctioned by VOAD. If you ever have a group that you want to put together that'd be interested in No One's Coming for You, I'd be happy to teach that class.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Ed. Do you have any information on that you can put in the chat, or would we want to just contact you?
Just contact me. Okay. And I'm Ed at habitatsaltlake.com.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for jumping in and sharing. Yeah, I know I kind of presented it in a joking manner when I brought it up, but it is serious. We do want everyone to be prepared and be able to survive and thrive in the event of an earthquake or another disaster like that. So thank you, Ed, for bringing that back up. And then finally, I wanted to bring you some updates on the Community Commitment Program, which is a program that we have launched to kind of strategically address homelessness and in specific homeless encampments. So this program began in the fall. Since then, we've had 3 resource fairs where we've had 14 community partners. So the VOA, the courts, other different services that are helpful to vulnerable populations, they go on site. That's what a resource fair is. It's when we bring those resources to the encampments. So we've had 3 of those since October and 2 coordinated outreach operations, which were basically resource fairs, but just a little bit pared down because of COVID spikes and things of that nature. So we have engaged 176 people and have made placement offers to 131 people. 48 people have accepted those placement offers, and 4 have accepted placements into detox programs. As I mentioned, our Salt Lake City Justice Courts have been on site to help those who need it. They have resolved 130 cases for 112 people, and 29 people have been referred to the driver's licensing division to get driver's licenses. And those 2 things are really important barriers. So if people have warrants or other types of legal issues, or they don't have an ID, those can be hindrances to getting them into stable housing. So it's pretty cool that we were able to, our partners were able to help get some of those things cleared up. And then also 2 victims of human trafficking were identified throughout the course of these resource fairs, and they were referred to special services and help. So those are kind of some stats. I can continue to update you. I'm also happy to answer general questions about homelessness in the city, but those were kind of the top 3 items that I had. So unless anyone has questions, I will throw it back to Amy.
Ed said in the chat that the unsheltered people may qualify for stimulus checks, and I read that they actually do, that there are a few different avenues for them to get stimulus money checks.
Yeah, and if I can jump in on that real quick, the city actually partnered with a few other organizations to try to help those who are unsheltered get stimulus checks. And we did that in the summer after the first round And I'd imagine that we're going to do that again with this second round, but that's a great point.
Thanks. Our minutes from last month's meeting has information too about the Salt Laker card, which the city did. If somebody didn't qualify for a stimulus check, but they, for whatever reason, need assistance right now and they live in Salt Lake, there's a way to get $500 in cash or on a card for that. So check that out on our last minutes, which I emailed out to everybody today. Okay, thanks, Jamie. Dan Dugan, it's your turn. Thank you for hosting our replacement meeting. Go ahead.
Sure, my pleasure. And thanks, Ed, for that information. That's appreciated. A couple updates. The American Rescue Plan, which is the $1.9 trillion stimulus package, Salt Lake City should see 87 million coming directly to the city. So it should be able to work on a lot of infrastructure. We're still getting our arms wrapped around exactly what we can spend the money on, but we're looking like we could possibly get up to $87 million of a stimulus package directly to the city. And we'll be able to use that money until the end of 2024. So that's a big boost to us. And we're gonna have to take a little time here to figure out exactly where we can spend the money and making sure that we're prioritizing that going forward for the next 2.5 years. And we have to spend the money. And basically, if we don't spend it by 2024 December, then it just goes back into the feds. Last night at the city council meeting, we delayed our decision on RMF 30, the rezoning amendments, and we're going to be postponing that until we look at the housing mitigation and the affordable housing overlay. So we pushed that decision out because we know it's going to be a lot of concerns and the ill effects if we go too fast on the RMF 30 decision. We approved a couple of rezonings, one on State Street, one on the Highland, some other places. We did not approve the rezoning on 200 South and Lincoln Street. We did not approve that last night. Mosquito abatement is still a big concern of mine, and I'm still kind of pushing forward to making sure that we do that properly. And that's mosquito abatement is, my concern is mosquito abatement out in the inland port area. And if it could have some possible ramifications to anybody on the west side from just the spray going to the west side or anybody in the airport. So that's a concern of mine, and I'm just staying focused on. On the budget side of the house, the sales budget numbers came in through December. It's usually a 2-month lagging data, but our sales numbers looked better than projected by $3 million. So our budget for this year, we were very conservative on our budget, and our sales numbers, which includes retail, manufacturing, food and beverage, wholesale sales, we're on the positive $3 million, and that's looking forward to the end of the fiscal year if everything stays the same. So that's good. Yes, food and beverage has taken the biggest hit, 43% down, but our retail and our wholesale, which are bigger sales dollars, did very well. So that helped. That's helpful across the city that our sales are actually better than what we had projected. Sales. I have just one letter to read, and this is coming from the Asian American and Pacific Islanders community. There was a shooting in Atlanta recently that killed 8 people, and I just want to read a statement. And the reason I'm reading the statement, it kind of hits home to us. And the statement is written by Senator Jani Yomoto, Representative Karen Kwan, Councilmember Jake Piti Simanu, Salt Lake District County Sim Gill, Councilmember Dan Romano from District 5, and some representatives of the Utah AA and PI community. And I'll just read the statement to you. We are devastated by the news of last night's shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, and we express our sincere condolences to all the victims and their families who are affected by this tragedy. While the motives connected to this horrifying killings are yet to be settled, it is deeply disturbing that many of the fatalities are among the most vulnerable in our communities, women of Asian descent. It is clear that anti-Asian hate incidents have exploded over the past year across our country. The increase of anti-hate speech is absolutely unacceptable and must stop. Divisive rhetoric, such as describing the coronavirus as a Chinese virus, has increased acts of hate against members of the AA and PI community broadly. Unfortunately, too often acts of hate go unreported. We urge all Utahns to come together, to call out hateful rhetoric, and to support one another as we get through this challenging time. Hate does not have a place in our community, but your safety and security does. You are not alone. So I just read that to you because this hate rhetoric is something that's is a virus, and we need to take a really close look at it and think about it and try to stop it in its tracks. So I appreciate that very much. And unless anyone else has any questions, that's all I have, Amy.
Thank you, Dan.
Dennis, you indicated recently that you were going to have a meeting with the university on the research park. Could you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I asked for a meeting in the springtime, March and April timeframe, and then they had the university community forum, which I'm not sure if anyone was on that meeting. It was more than, it was disappointing to me. And they were saying, oh, they were going to extend it out. So I haven't got an updated date from Jonathan Bates on that one. I'll reach out to him again. They're kind of in a holding pattern now with the presidency. And I'm a little frustrated. I wrote some comments back to the university after that the youth community forum, kind of stating just what I said there. Hey, I'm disappointed in not having something like that, but I'll reach out to Jonathan and see if I can have another meeting with him. But nothing has gone any further than the last time we spoke, Dennis, which is it's kind of waiting in I would say it's waiting in limbo at this time. At least that's what the feeling I'm getting right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dan, also, have you heard any updates on Lamplighter Square submitting plans or requests for anything?
No, I want to get, it's been about 6 weeks or so. I want to give another week, and I'm going to call up Mark because I'm not quite sure what his plans are, but I think I have a feeling that he might be changing some things. So I figured you got to give him a little time to do that. Yeah. I'm going to reach out to him again on that one. Yeah, that's in the back of my mind to call him up to find out if he's changing his approach.
Okay, that's the same thing I think and hear. Dan, real quick, there was a recent newspaper article about how they can kind of put up 5G poles kind of wherever they want to, and including neighborhoods and in front of houses and all that kind of stuff. And people are worried about that. So do you have any insight on that?
I'm worried about it as everybody else is too. And what I'll do, hold on, I've got to admit someone in here. I got to do my duties as
doing everything. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the post too, because right now we only have one supplier of submitting permits for poles, 5G towers, and we're going to have 4 or 5 of them. So we're trying to push harder that we co-locate them. We put them on telephone light poles. We put them on traffic lights and so on, because it's going to be a concern. But I did look at the ordinance, and I intend to send it out to you on where they can actually go in your right of way. And that's that parking strip. They can go in that parking strip, certain distance from your driveway, certain distance from a tree, utility poles. And I can send out the map on that one, because I was just reading through it today, and it's something that we probably all want to take a look at on where a pole could possibly go in your right of way in front of your house. It's serious across the city. The city's starting to look at it now. I'm talking with the city attorneys, do we need to go outside of the city attorneys to experts to see if we can get some more FCC experts to figure out how we can better work with the providers, because they have a lot of power across the United States. And we could see a lot of polls throughout our neighborhoods, is my worry. Not just on this school, but across our neighborhoods.
I've seen the polls that they're talking about in other places, like along 17th South. They're just kind of in front of businesses, it looks like so far, but they're pretty imposing. They're
No.
worse than a telephone poll to me, so.
Absolutely. Just go to the Java Joe's across the street from East High School. I think on 900 South and 1300 East. There's a big one. It's a 50-foot or it's a 40-foot pole. It's troubling.
So if anyone gets notices one of those are going to be built in their yard, let us know at ASAP so we can join the fight, because I don't want those in front of people's houses.
And I'll get you the information on the sheet. I'll send it out to you, Amy, so you can kind of broadcast it out.
Thank you. And real quick, we got an answer from Lieutenant Trost told us that the call time is from the time the call comes into dispatch, not when the police hear about it. It's from the time you pick up the phone and call to when the police get there. So that's good. That's no extra minutes of delay. So thank you for that. Right? Okay. Our next thing.
Can I just say one more thing about 5G really quick? So the city attorneys briefed the council about 5G towers and like 2 weeks ago, and it's posted online on YouTube, and I watched it. It's like a 45-minute conversation, but I found it very helpful in understanding the legal kind of parameters and what the city attorneys are kind of working with. So I can post that in the chat, and Councilmember Dugan brings up some really good questions in that as well. So plug for Councilmember Dugan, but if anyone's really interested in the nitty-gritty, I will post that in the chat and you can watch it.
Jamie, will you send me all this stuff too? Because we just put it in the minutes and you do a great job for us, so I appreciate that. Okay, we're gonna go on to our next thing, which I think a lot of people are here to talk about. That's the planned development. Let me share this. I'm gonna set it up real quick and then we'll have a few different groups talk about it. So this is it's called Emigration Overlook Plan Development. You may remember we talked about this in 2016 because a very similar project was brought before the planning department in 2016 and it was approved then. The East Bend Community Council discussed it, didn't take a specific vote, but ultimately approved, not that we have to approve anything, but didn't oppose this project at that time. So you can see right here, it's this this stair step down. All the other buildings are already there. This is a rendering. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but this is a rendering of this stair step down building that's proposed to be built there. Here also is the link for, the link for where you can go to the online open house that shows, you know, the contact for who you need to contact at planning to make a comment. You can see the plans there. You can see the application from the owner. There's a lot of information you can get there, and that's a good place to make comments as well. So that's the drawing of what it's proposed to look like. These are the east and west elevations. On the map, it's number 860 Donner Way. I think that's right. And it kind of wedges in there. You can see on the right, kind of wedges in there, doesn't have much frontage on Donner Way. Kind of wedges in there, and then they've illustrated it below. Like I said, it's a stair step down. So if you're looking at it from Donner Way, it kind of looks like a 1 or 2 level building. If you look at it from the west elevation, which is like down by the dog park or on Sunnyside, it looks like a taller building. And then there's all the contact information for Kelsey, who's the senior planner for this project. So next I'm gonna have Kelsey say what you want to say about it real quick. And then we're gonna have a group that came out of the condos that are already there. You can see their condo buildings all right around where this is proposed to be built. Jonathan Duncan is going to talk about some of the things that they've thought of, questions they have, and concerns they have. So Kelsey, if you want to talk for a minute, and then we'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. I'm Kelsey Lindquist. I'm a senior planner with Salt Lake City Planning, and I am taking this plan development through the process. So we analyze these projects from a neutral position against the standards in depending on what they're going through. So either the subdivision ordinance or the zoning ordinance. The subdivision ordinance, they're not going through a new sub, so it's not applicable for this project as of right now. What standards we will be using are the plan development standards found in the zoning ordinance. And so unfortunately, the applicant isn't here to discuss his project. I have more of a neutral position, so that's really what I'll say. I'm happy to address any questions. And we also have the Salt Lake City attorney in the meeting as well that can help address some questions.
Oh, who's that?
Paul Nielsen.
Paul, are you there? Say hi. Unmute yourself so you can. I think there are.
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thanks for coming to our meeting. I'm glad to have you. Mr. Duncan, are you ready to talk?
I sure am. And can you share the screen if it's Dan or whoever it is? I
Oh,
just have some graphics.
we need to make Jonathan like a
You
co-host.
need to make
so he can
Jonathan a
hear
host,
this.
okay?
Yeah. Can you do it, Dan?
Let me know when it's good to go.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so excuse me, play slideshow. All right, so everybody, you kind of stole my rhetorical fire here because I was going to start the presentation by remembering a year ago tomorrow, and I don't think I would be here. You remember Earthquake Day? We do up here on Donner Way, and I grew up here along the Wasatch Front, and we never had an earthquake when I was little, and I've actually never lived through one. And I pun intended, it kind of shook me up a little bit. And it got me thinking about how, we really need to think seriously about how we're preparing in terms of our community plans and the type of developments we're going to be entertaining along the fault line. And so that's where I wanted to start this conversation. A couple of weeks ago, as you all did, we received the message from, Kelsey about there's this new development, if you want to go check it out. And so I'm community minded, I serve on the homeowners association and this and that. So I went down with not really any expectations to look at the site. And I look over this steep precipice, and do you guys know that book, Malcolm Gladwell's Blink? Well, if you don't, it's a book about just the subconscious knowing something's not right, and so I'm looking down this 63-degree slope, and I'm just trying to imagine. It takes a serious leap of imagination to imagine a 30,000-foot residential structure sutured onto this slope. And I invite all of you, I've invited Councilman Dugan to come and see it. If anybody wants to come and look at this parcel with me, I'd be happy to show you what I'm talking about and see if you have that same visceral sense. Amy took me up on my offer today. And so, and I also think I'm going to treat this as a presentation amongst friends, because it's interesting looking around this call. There's only a handful of people in the world that know just how intensely I've been digging into getting the details about what's going on here, and all of them are on this call. Look, who I'm talking about. Like, I'm looking over here at Kelsey, I'm looking at Jamie. I've been in touch with everybody. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. And so here is the slope assessment map that's provided by the applicant. And if you're interested in building on steep slopes, steep grades, and what codes are relevant here in Salt Lake, you want to familiarize yourself with this 18.28.040. And it reads, undevelopable slopes. Any natural slopes identified on a slope classification map, such as the one you're looking at, of 30% or greater shall be designated undevelopable areas. And the code goes on to add emphasis, in no event shall streets traverse such slopes. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is strange, because a lot of these slopes in this map are significantly in excess of 30%. So I dig a little further, and we find that in 2001, 18.28 was amended to reflect new research that was coming into the city. And the new amendment reads, research showed that landslides, slope instability, slope failure, and soil erosion significantly increase on slopes that are 30% or less. And so I'm taking this to mean that the purpose of this code is to mitigate those negative outcomes. The city's recognizing that by building onto these steeper grades, you are increasing the likelihood of these significantly negative outcomes, slope instability, slope failure. And so let me take you on a tour here of you showed a little bit of the site map here. This is the slope analysis that's been provided by the applicant. And I've spent some time with this, and I don't like this blue line. you guys look at that blue line, and anybody that knows how to read this, that's problematic. And what that blue line is attempting to do is, you see the slope average here in the bottom left. It's attempting to create the impression that this development is actually in code. And the deal with this is it's taking the parcel as an entirety and creating a median average. But you in the know, I know, Kelsey knows this. You actually, if you're going to use a median average, you use the developmental footprint as the median average. So I find this blue line to be a little bit deceiving. I calculated the actual developmental footprint is 42.1%. So we're 12% out of code. So at this point, I'm just kind of going through this. I'm a citizen, just trying to get a handle on all this. And I know wrong. I'm like, something's wrong. And so I contacted the city, and I want to say to everybody on the call, the city has been awesome. Everybody's been very responsive. We've had a really good dialogue. So none of this is adversarial. But what happened is, when I started digging in, the city responds with this kind of grandfathered exemption. And I'm going to inform you, I read the staff report this afternoon that was filed in 2016. This is news to me. This was new. This is not in the staff report. And the wording that's coming out of the city is, the steep regulations will not be applicable for this property. And so I'm going, well, that sounds something that I don't know what to make of, that is what I'm saying. It's like, so we look at this, and I'm calling it kind of the parcel from 1977. And the city's, what I'm getting from is that this subject property was recorded on the subdivision plat in 1977. And through the recording of the plat, Salt Lake City acknowledged that this was a buildable lot. The plat was recorded prior to the adoption of 18.28. Due to this, it is unlikely that slope restrictions in Title 18 will be applicable to this property. So I'm sitting there going, so this is like a time travel piece, that all of the rules and regulations and the science and the research that the city's done itself that are informing our ideas that developing on properties in excess of 30% is problematic. You can't even grade a road at a degree of that angle, but we can build like a 30,000 square foot structure. And so I talked to a urban planning consultant, and the words that were coming out of her mouth, she's going, how can you grandfather in something that doesn't exist? Like, if I get it, if in 1977 a developer came to the city and they proposed a plan, the plan was within the code of that time, you stamp it, that is grandfathered in. I get it. But so the question that those of us who are going to be digging into this deeper, and there'll be lawyers, and there's going to be some analysis, and we're going to get our own like engineering, studies, and all that is going to come to this issue of, how are these vested rights being codified and interpreted? And that's what the city's going to have to think about. Like, they're going to have to come up with a very articulate explanation of how they're getting around. Like, so this is the words that came out of my urban planning consultant. She says, the simple act of designating a buildable lot does not freeze time and does not render subsequent changes in the regulations inapplicable. And so, I think I want everybody on the call to just think about that, and we can have an informed, intelligent, rational conversation about, doesn't that sound kind of right? Like, I was going through any number of examples of like ways the codes have affected the use of different types of land across the city, and every decade we have a different situation that arises that requires us to revisit past code and revise it. And so I spent this afternoon, I think as a matter of fact, Jamie knows this. She sent me this today. And did you know I was going to read it, Jamie? I did. And so I read this thing. And so all of those concerns about all that development and what I'm saying about the city's own research and all of this stuff, it all is being, the city has found a way in these 4 paragraphs to describe and to kind of excuse all of that information away. If you want to know what the city in their Planning Commission's 2016 staff report, what they had to say to explain all of those problems and the time travel piece and the vested rights and all that, this is all they have. And so if this looks like sufficient in order to assuage citizen concern about like building on these type of grades, then I think we need to have a bigger conversation. What I read this, and I'm not a city planner, but I'm reading this, it says, zoning section code 21A has no such restrictions, and therefore the planning commission is more bound to that code. I looked up 20.8. It's a procedural code about what's required for an applicant to bring in order to to expedite their permit. 21A is not about zoning in terms of like steep grades. There's no research into that, so that doesn't like really help me. And then the not authorized to review standards of site development regulations 18. You're gonna have to tell me what that means. And then what happened in this staff report report is they just kick it down the can. They say, you know, these type of codes and these kind of issues, they're just not in our wheelhouse. You know, this is the building services division. And so we're going through this process. And incidentally, the applicant has not presented a updated geotechnical report. The geotechnical report people are working under, unless I'm mistaken, is from like 2001. This is like old news, man. And so this is something I want to, my very first email to Kelsey was saying something like, you know, why are we even going through this if it hasn't been proven to be safe? And I still have that question. I know there's process, I know there's different stages, but it seems to me before we have public comment and you and I are having this conversation, the applicant should be required to prove, like with a current, updated, enhanced geotechnical report, that this structure is going to, like, you know, meet the, you know, it's not going to slide, right? And so my final, excuse me. So this, I'm just getting to my final point here. Does this sound like a, you know, the underlying basis of our concern is pretty simple. And so this will be my last thought for y'all. The underlying basis of our concern is pretty simple. The proposed development intends to somehow suture a 30,000 square foot building onto a severe slope that is totally out of code along an active earthquake fault directly beneath the foundation of a 7-story residential structure. So, you know, that's what we need to kind of come to grips with. What we're dealing with here is we're kind of moving in, and I know there's this sense of inevitability. There's this sense of, yeah, you know, we'll have these hearings and we'll talk about it, but this is going to happen. That's what people told me when I started getting into this. They were saying, you know, good luck, Jonathan. This is not something that people change. But then I started getting a sense something isn't right here. And that's the information I've gathered. I hope it strikes you as somewhat informed. And so my last thought will be, you know, I've tried, I'm a photographer, by the way, and I tried to get a picture that kind of captures what a 56-degree slope looks like, or 63-degree slope, excuse me. And I couldn't do it really justice. I asked Ed if I rappel in off of I was going to rappel in, but he thought that might be a little bit hokey, a little bit showy, but look at this slope, and anybody that wants to come and tour it with me, I'm happy to show you. And this is the concerns we have. And once you go down this road, you know, there's kind of no going back. And so I want us to have a really thoughtful discussion. I don't want this to feel inevitable. And I want there to be some good questions asked about why these codes that have been adopted and the research that's gone into informing them aren't being applied to this particular property. And if you guys can do that for me, then I'm all ears. And I really appreciated this opportunity. So thank you, Amy. Thank you to the EBCC. And,
okay. Thanks, Jonathan.
I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay.
Lanterns.
Let's see. So I'm going to run the discussion this way. We're not going to do a Q&A to ask Jonathan something because he presented, and I think he was a representative, I believe, of the HOAs and the buildings that surround there.
No, that's not the HOA. I'm representing the Donner Way Condominium Coalition. It's a consortium of owners all across the whole neighborhood.
Is it a new organization created for this purpose, or has it existed?
It's predated. It actually kind of came to gel about public safety, about the detectives know about that.
Okay, right. Okay, so it's kind of new-ish.
Kind of newish.
But yeah, so the head of the VO of the owners association, or the HOA for the buildings that are around there, I've spoken to, and they kind of have talked to Jonathan. So that's kind of a representation of the way they feel. Okay, Jonathan, I'm cutting you off. We're not doing a Q&A with you.
Okay.
But, and I also want to,
go.
Okay, I'm going to mute you. Kelsey, do you have some immediate kind of answer to the things that Jonathan said? Or if you don't, I would like to maybe represent the things that the executive board recognized about this project when we first saw it.
Yeah, I would actually like to turn some time over to Paul Nielsen to address the majority of Jonathan's questions.
Okay, so Paul, can you hold on for just a second and let me give a little bit of so we're not going straight from one thing to another, if that makes sense, to maybe take a step back. The thing that, thank you. The thing about this is that we are not a technical board. So the East Bench, Jonathan, can you stop sharing your screen so we can see some more of the participants? We're not a technical board. So people don't come to the East Bench Community Council to talk about, construction methods and that kind of stuff. It's kind of like, what does your community as community neighbors think about this? So the idea, when the executive board first saw it, we recognized that this had been approved before, although not built. So it was approved in generally the same way that it's written out here, by the Planning Commission, by the East Bench Community Council. Whether or not you individually got a chance to comment on it is, I don't know. Because the processes in 2016 were different. The chair was a different person. The secretary was a different person. When we immediately saw it, and we thought the number one complaint that we see as community members on new projects is it ruins my view. Whether you're building something uphill, whether you're the last house uphill, or you're building something between me and the golf course, ruining people's view is a complaint in this hilly neighborhood. And this project doesn't do that. They have a downhill slope and they're building along a downhill slope. So that's kind of like one of the things that we hear all the time is not a problem with this project. My other, one thing I also want to bring up is that I think that the person who's building this building is going to live there. Which is not unusual. When we had a project developed at the south end of our geography, that owner also is building a home that they will live in along with 17 others. There's something there. The earthquake is a huge concern. My major is in geology and I am afraid of earthquakes and I buy earthquake insurance. And when we bought our home, which is built on a hilly lot, instead of adding a master suite, we did earthquake upgrades. And every single month I tell everybody who's on this call to go to fix the bricks because our houses are not built to withstand earthquakes. If you live in an unreinforced masonry home, whether it's a condo or a single family home or whatever it is, it's not going to withstand earthquakes. So that's a concern for me, for everybody. Another concern that I've heard of is that there will be pain during construction, and that's always true in these projects, and I apologize for that, and I know it will be a problem. I wonder if we have if we are the people to say, let's look at this lot and say, it looks like you couldn't build a home there, because there are a lot of homes built in a lot of places that it looks like you couldn't build a home in our neighborhood. We live in a hilly neighborhood. The condos that are built there are, I mean, there are fences around. The one that's just around the corner, there's a fence around there, how to get into their driveway, because it's a huge drop off from the fence where you get a good view down into where you drive into the building that's just right next to there. The buildings that are there are already cut a little bit into the hill. Those are some of the things that I thought of, and some things that we talked about as an executive board. Some of the things that Jonathan's bringing up are super technical, and of course they are, because he's concerned about the technicality of this building being built next door to his, and how does it affect the slope and the stability. As long as I want everyone to understand, I'm worried about your homes anyway, whether or not this thing is built here or not. Earthquakes, the big earthquake that we deserve to have, not tomorrow, but the big earthquake that's coming is going to knock all of our homes down unless we take action to reinforce that masonry. Okay, that's my piece that I wanted to say. Now, Paul Nielsen, if you can address some of the legality, the questions that were brought up and that kind of stuff.
Sure. And I don't want to get too much in depth, and I'm not going to address any of the geology issues because obviously that's not my expertise. And I think if I tried to start talking about slope stability and those kinds of things, I'd look like a fool. So I'm going to try to stay in my zone of knowledge here for a minute. The issue as to vested rights is one that's, for the most part, developed through court decisions. We do have some statutory provisions, but there are a couple of cases in particular that guide my thinking on this. And let me just kind of pause for a moment to say, I don't want to get into a position here where I explain all of what it is that I'm thinking on this, because there may come a point where the city has to defend a lawsuit, and sometimes it's best not to show all your cards up front. But there are enough cases out there that help me to understand that the property appears to have established the right to develop something when it was created as a building lot back in 1977. What does that mean today? It depends on the regulations, but one of the current regulations that I think we cannot impose on this property is the 30% slope regulation, because if we do that, we're essentially stripping the property of any right to develop, given the nature of the slopes here. Now, that's not to say that it's something that is going to be able to develop in an easy way and affordably. And there certainly are a lot of challenges here. And again, I'm not going to get into the geology and the engineering, but if the city were to say you cannot develop on this parcel or anywhere on this parcel that has a slope in excess of 30%, what we've done is we've made it impossible to develop on a lot that was created with development value. And the United States Supreme Court, in a case called Palazzolo, made it very clear that the passage of time or the transfer of ownership of property does not change the nature of vested rights. When you purchase property, you do so with an expectation that you will be able to capture value out of that. So at this point, it's in my mind, it's clear that the 30% slopes can't act as a bar on this, because the lot was recognized as a building lot before the city adopted its 30% slope regulation. I don't want to really get too much into detail beyond that. I'm happy to answer some questions about that. I know that Jonathan mentioned that he spoke with the municipal planner about vested rights, and while I respect the thoughts on that, this is something that I have particular expertise with, and I feel confident in my assessment of the situation on the 30% slope applicability.
Paul, there's a question in the chat about, is the city liable if these buildings fall down after if you allow them? Because remember the buildings all up in Davis County that fell off the hill after it was approved?
Boy, you're putting me in a difficult situation on that comparison, because I had conversations with people who knew the Davis, I think it was the county engineer, who looked at those development plans and approved them. And there was some question as to whether those plans should have been approved, whether the engineering was sound on that. And I think that the facts prove that the engineering on that wasn't sound, and the geotechnical information may not have been 100% accurate. That was my understanding. I don't know firsthand the truth of those things. Yeah. As far as the city's liability, that's something that we're examining, and it's not something that we're going to make public, because the city would be in a difficult position in any kind of a lawsuit if we were to say, yes, we have liability, or those are just not the kinds of things that my office would generally reveal. Let me just say that if professional engineers and geologists are to conclude that these slopes are stable and that the engineering is sound, there may be a liability on their part if their conclusions are, if their information is negligent and erroneous.
So between Paul and Kelsey, tell me if all of those tests have been done. Has the engineering write-up of this been looked at yet? Are the soil tests done? Is there a geotechnical? Is there an environmental report that's been done yet or anything?
Kelsey?
An environmental report will not be required on this parcel. An enhanced geotechnical report will be required prior to building permit submittal. And that'll be required to be submitted to building services and not to planning. They are the experts in reviewing building engineering and stability. The current geotechnical that the applicant provided is outdated, and he is quite aware that it will need to be updated prior to building permit submittal. There is a possibility that Planning Commission could request a new geotechnical and table the item until that's submitted. But as of right now, staff cannot require that.
Okay, but that will happen before construction. And Kelsey, is there a time in which, is there another public input time after this process? Is this the last time that neighbors can say on the record, I'm concerned about this or that?
No, you can say your concerns or your public comments really up until and during the Planning Commission hearing.
Okay, right. But after the Planning Commission, when they make their decision, is there another point where somebody says, I'd like to see the geotechnical report, or I'm concerned about this engineering? Or is this it?
Well,
Paul, so after the Planning Commission actually won't look at the slope issues per se. They don't have the expertise on that. It's our building services division that will take the development proposal and they'll assess the seismic issues and the slope issues. They'll rely on the reports that are provided to them. They will make that assessment, and they are aware of the 30% slope issue on this. I mean, this isn't the first time this property has been proposed for development. And I will be having a conversation with the folks in building services about whether the 30% slope regulations should apply. There won't be an opportunity for public input for the issuance of a building permit. That's generally something that's done administratively based on the expertise of the folks involved. The public input would be at the Planning Commission stage.
Yeah, and that's what we're in right now. Hold on just a second. Oh, Dan, you can ask questions, but.
Thank you. I'm going back one step. This is all within the zoning ordinance, right? It doesn't go to this is not going up into the city council because it's within the zoning ordinance. Okay.
Yeah, it's considered administrative and not legislative, so the city council would not see this. The reason why it's in a plan development stage and application is because of the lot frontage, where Jonathan showed you that really narrow frontage. It doesn't meet the frontage requirements. Initially, upon first glance, it appeared that there were aspects of the building that were over height, so I included that in the noticing. But with the additional information, the chimneys and the elevator bulkheads are actually able to extend beyond the height limitations of the RMF 45 just by right. And so they don't need approval for the height. They just need approval for the lot width at this time.
So does that mean that the building that they're building is so large that they unless they do a plan development, they couldn't just like build a residence there that's that big?
Can you?
Okay, so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
So they need a variance for like the lot frontage because they have like 23 feet. It's like a shared driveway, and they couldn't build 30,000 is it 30,000 square feet? Is that right? Is that number right? They couldn't build a building that large with only that much frontage unless they do a plan development?
They couldn't build, they wouldn't meet the development requirements for any building without a plan development because of the frontage requirements.
Okay,
And-
but they bought it that way, right? Like they haven't like bought
Correct.
into the driveway or anything. That's just the shape of the lot that they own, right? So, and my understanding is that one of the units that's there, that's kind of like uphill from them a little bit, will lose 2 visitor parking spaces. I think that this building that he's doing is 12 units, but they're big units. They're not like small apartments. So it's a 30,000 square foot building. Jonathan, not if I'm right. I think that's what you told me. He's going to have 12 parking spaces on his property, not in the street. Is all of that right? Does that all sound right?
So far.
So one of the concerns was that this would be that there would be an additional stress on emergency vehicles, that kind of stuff. How many units, Jonathan, how many units are already represented by the condo coalition up there? 1,200?
No, what we have right now in our, I think we have a petition that people have signed on to join our coalition, and we're at 122.
Well, that's just specific for this project. But if you have, is that right? What you're
Well, if
talking
you're talking about
about?
how many people live in the Donnerway community,
Yeah.
we're into, I think someone gave me a ballpark figure. Dan might know this, but someone said 5, like Ed, do you know the answer? How many people? 5,000 live in Donnerway community?
At least 1,200 units. So this is an increase in less than 10%, maybe 1%, right, of additional units.
This is not the argument, though, that we're here to discuss, really, in terms of
Right.
like,
Well,
what
I'm
the-
answering questions that are off of the
Oh,
chat.
okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I'm answering questions that are off of the chat. So yeah, it's there. Apparently the units are huge. It's 12 units. It's only 12 units. And units, as always, whether they're 3,000 square foot each or 6,000 square foot each or whatever it is, you still can only have less than 4 unrelated people living in a unit, right, Kelsey? That's still a code rule. So it's not a huge amount of people. It's not a huge amount of cars. I think there are 20 spaces I counted on the drawing.
I believe there are 26 proposed stalls on site.
There you go.
Yeah, so there's no on-street parking proposed.
So if there's concern about that the additional people who will live there are going to take up need a lot of ambulance drives and fires trucks and that kind of stuff, I think that it's really a small percentage compared to how dense it already is up there. So there are a lot of technical issues to be worked out. Kelsey, if people are making statements like Kelsey, where is a good place for these concerns to be mitigated or understood or something like that? Because people are concerned that if you do any more digging out of the lot there, that it may make the other properties unstable or something like that. Where is the place to talk about that? Because that's not the expertise of the Planning Commission. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, you can provide those comments to me and they would be incorporated into the staff report to Planning Commission, but it is really at the building services, the permit level, that they would review the stability of the proposed project and whether or not that would impact adjacent or abutting structures.
Yeah, my concern is that the concerns that are being shared here are pretty technical and legal. And the Planning Commission, from the meetings that I've been to, that's not the kind of things that they consider. So I wonder how the residents and neighbors who are concerned about that kind of thing are going to be heard. Like, when do they find out? Well, I want to see the geotechnical report and I want to see if their construction methods make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, or Paul, do you know, is there an avenue for them to do that? Because we can vote, we can say, raise your hand if you're in favor of this project the way it's presented today. And I don't know that will make a big difference if we say 100 people said no or something like that, because there are concerns that seem to are outside of the bounds of the planning commission. So somebody tell me what.
If neighbors want to see the geotechnical reports, those can be requested. I don't know if we would require a grammar request for those kinds of documents. There's a reason why there isn't public input at the building services stage, and that's because it's a completely technical review at that point. And once an application gets there, it's really just a matter of does it meet code or not. We have public hearings at planning commission meetings for the kinds of things that require some deviation from the typical rule. That's what a plan development is. It's where we allow some flexibility with the established standards. If the project came in and met all of the requirements in the code, they could just go straight to building services and request their permits. And it's just a purely technical review at that point based on the expertise that our code reviewers have. But if there's an interest in getting some of that information, that can be requested of the building services division.
Could the planning commission take something like, Kelsey, could we say if the only question you're asking us about is that there's not enough frontage on this for it to be a building lot, if that's the only question you're asking us about, can we also make a request that there is some specific study of how will the building of this project affect the buildings that are around it? Like, could that be a requirement that the planning commission puts on?
No, I do not believe so, but they could require or request the enhanced geotech prior to issuing a decision on the plan development. The plan development section does have some flexibility in requesting additional plans prior to approval or denial of an application. And so that's something that the planning commission, I believe they could do before they made a decision, but I don't believe that they could require a study the structure and the other structures.
What would require a environmental study on this lot? Just a second, Jonathan, you're next after this question. At what point would you require a study? Because there's talk that there's a kind of a swampy, kind of a spring, it's called Spring Canyon right there. Like there's a spring and it's kind of swampy. What would require that?
Well, they are required to do public utility and water studies associated with this development. So Public Utilities actually forwarded a review list that would be required for this development, and the applicant would be required to conduct all of those studies and meet those requirements prior to development.
What kind of questions are on that, or what kind of things?
Those would be accessible. Those are accessible to the public in Acela. So in the Citizens Access portal, all of the
on that open house, that online open house?
I believe there's a link to the Citizens Access portal on the open house link. If not, to you, Amy, and you can share it with
you. Yeah, will you send that to me so we can see? Because there's questions about like, what are they going to do for sewer? Because they're below, they're below like the sewer that's in the street and that kind of stuff. So is that kind of stuff going to be on that? I guess we'll have to look at that.
Kelsey, you want to tell them what they're going to do with the sewer? How are they going to do the sewer?
They will likely have to pump.
Yeah, they're going to put in a massive tank built into the side that will hold 7 days worth of sewage, and then they'll pump it up the hill. So that's
Jonathan, is that in the plans right now? Is that something you can?
That's what it was, just came to my attention today. Yeah.
That's not in the plans right now. The Public Utilities review comments will be available in Citizens Access, and that goes along with engineering comments, transportation comments, fire, building code. Everybody will have the comments in this one place so that you can see what all these other divisions and departments are requiring from this development.
Yeah. Jonathan, let's make sure that we're talking about things that have officially Like, where did you see it? Was that just a conversation
No,
that
it
you
was
had,
actually,
or-
it was in the preceding plan, and there had been someone who had gone up in the 2016 effort, and that was one of the points of contention that came out in public remarks in 2016.
And that was,
how they're handling the sewer, and
and that answer was made by who? By the builder?
You know, I have to admit that I don't have this documentation in
Yeah,
front of me,
okay.
but I think Kelsey just mentioned that that's what they're going to do. They're going to have to pump it up. There's no other way for it to go.
The more specific details about the public utilities will be worked out amongst public utilities and the developer. But the general list of requirements that the applicant needs to start working on, and the tests and the studies, those will be available on the Citizens Access Portal.
So, okay. Ed, you know a lot about building. Ed's making some comments in chat if everyone wants to go overlook at that. He's like, he gets that. He builds homes and stuff like that. So that's, let's.
Well,
Yeah,
I
and
have
I'm
a question
happy
for Dan. I'll quiet down here if I just ask one more question. And listening to this, you know, kind of dialogue, it's speaking to my point. I think everybody that's listening, it's clear to everybody. I think it's even clear to Paul. I think it's clear to Kelsey. Like, something's wrong with this. You know, like, this process isn't leading to the result that citizens aren't having enough opportunity to read environmental impact statements of something going on in their backyard. We don't know. There's a lot of these questions that seem fair. And I'll tell you something. This is my very first go round in civic activism. You've never seen me before. And so my point is, something's not right here. And maybe I can talk to Dan and we can think about how the council can remedy this process. I mean, this is something that if this is going to be the norm about how we're going to go about constructing multifamily dwellings on fault lines along the Wasatch Front, I'm not satisfied. And I don't think, I'm looking around the group, is anybody really kind of, does this feel good to anybody? And then I'll let Ed talk. I'm out.
Ed, why don't you take a minute? If you want to.
Okay. I was in attendance in the 2016 city council meeting. And
it went to the city council then, Ed? Why did it? Why did it go to the city council?
I went to that meeting.
Why did it go to the city council is what I'm asking. Do you know why? Because it won't this time.
It went to the city council for the approval of 2016, and
Planning Commission.
Weston Clark was on the council then.
Okay, that's just the planning commission, Ed. Let's be clear. That's not Dan Dugan's group. That's the planning commission. Okay, good. Okay. Right, Weston Clark was on there, right.
Let me be clear, they also serve on the city council, these guys. So Weston Clark served on the city council.
No, he didn't.
No.
He ran for city council, but he was never on it. Am I wrong about that? I think he was planning commission.
You're correct. Mr. Clark was on the planning commission at the time.
And so was Derek Kitchen. And so.
No, Derek Kitchen was not.
Okay. But I spoke to these guys after the meeting, and you know, they said, Ed, we just needed to move this along. And Paul, as your discussion that you had tonight, they weren't getting involved in the weeds of how this building was going to be built. And so it follows directly along the lines of what you've talked about tonight. As a builder of homes, I know that there's probably another 12 steps in the approval process. Everything from can fire trucks get to the building, to geotech, to so on. The fact that what they're doing is they're trying to take this lot and twist it in all different directions to make it work. One of the things is pumping the sewer up to basically the circle or the cul-de-sac to get it into the public system where it can gravity feed away from there, because they cannot access those utilities at the bottom of this development. And we know this.
Ed, do you know why they can't access the utilities down there? Because like the zoo is down there. Do you know why they can't?
They have to cross through basically all of the water easements and everything else are at the bottom. And so you've got the creek, you've got the pond down there and so on. And I'm trying to remember his name. I got Christopher in my head and it's not quite right, the designer, but he said they could not access those utilities through the bottom. They had to pump them back up. This is in the 2016 meeting. So,
Ed, how do the buildings that are on the west side of Donner currently get their sewage out of there? Because some of those units are below street level, so they couldn't use the gravity method.
Yeah.
We access both stormwater and sewer from there. So Oak Crest Gardens is connected into the current sewer system.
With a pump for
No,
some of the units?
absolutely not. We're into gravity. So they have to bring it back up to that top driveway to access the sewer system. And that's going to require a sewer pump. It's not to say that we don't have buildings that have sewer pumps, but this one's going to be tough because it's such a large building, and that complicates things. So all of these things have already been put down on paper previously in 2016, and so we're not guessing on them unless something has radically changed since then. We are concerned about the hillside. We are concerned about our safety. I live in the building directly above this, as Jonathan does. So we have really safety concerns. The other thing, Amy, that I sent along to you is another developer in the area tried to do a 30+ hillside with an alluvial V in it, and they couldn't do it and they abandoned it. And we're still dealing with that. It's still a scar that sits right above Donner Way, and nobody has stepped up to say, I take responsibility for that. The developer went bankrupt. And so I think what it's done is in our neighborhood, it has given us pause on what's being approved and what are we going to be living with if it doesn't go right. And so I think that's part of the concerns that you're seeing that are coming up right now along Donner. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents on what you asked
Ed,
me.
when was that? Does everybody know the retaining wall that he's talking about? People are always complaining that kids throw TVs off of it. They're partying up there, like there's vandalism and stuff. When was that built, Ed? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. I've only been in this facility for about 6.5 years. It was before I got here.
It was before I got here and moved here like 5
And if you
years
look at the blocks that they used to retain the hill 30 feet high, I would say those blocks are pretty modern. So my sense would be in the last 20 years.
Paul or Kelsey, are you guys familiar with that? What happens if they start building this stuff and then it's...
So just to that particular development, I looked that up after you sent me an email, I believe, Ed. Mm-hmm. And they started constructing that in 2007. So given what happened in 2008, the developer did go bankrupt. Outside of what happens if they get a building permit and go bankrupt, I mean, it does happen in the city. I don't know if Paul, do you want to address what we do as far as follow-up?
I mean, there's not a lot we can do if somebody doesn't complete construction. I guess you just wait until the next person with dreams and imagination comes along and tries to finish the project.
Dan, I heard a question.
I know that's not soothing, but
yeah, Paul, you're not making us feel better on that one. Dan, is there any interest in the city buying this lot and just having it be open space? I mean, how much is this lot? It's not that big. What is it? Is it even 2 acres? It's not very big. Yeah, it's not even 2 acres, I don't think. Added on to the dog park down there. I mean, it's just covered with trees right now.
Well, it'll be for 12-year-old boys and over who just want to play and just run up and jump around.
Yeah. Is there a bond required for completion? Kelsey or Paul, does anybody know that?
That's a building services question. I can follow up with you, Amy, on that answer.
Okay. I remember I did financing of commercial real estate, and there were bonds required by lenders too, I mean, lenders are trying not to take a lot of risk in this either, but
we don't usually bond for things outside of public improvements. Those are usually what we will bond for, but I can follow up with building services and see if this would be something that they would be interested in bonding.
Any idea, are there any insurance geniuses out there who know if it would, if something is constructed there, if it makes any difference about whether the people in the other existing buildings can get earthquake insurance? Dang, this is a long meeting. It's going really late. My intention was, and I mean, it is because we're the official community organization in this geography. So we're specifically asked, do we want to make a comment or take a position on this project? So we usually, on projects like that, the executive board usually decides to take a position, and then we take a vote, and then we relay that to the commission at the time of the meeting. We're offered an opportunity as the community council to speak at the meeting and convey the issues there. Of course, every single one of you are welcome to and encouraged to make a comment at the meeting. Make a comment to Kelsey right now, and she puts it in the file of things that go to the commissioners. I want to tell you that our experience has been that a lot of times, because the way that the rules are, if we say we don't approve this or we're not in favor of this, it passes anyway. So it's not dyed in the wool. I wonder if I'm thinking sometimes we don't take a positions on things. The last time we had an ADU request, we decided to share comments but not take a vote on it, and it was the executive board that decided that. Also, in the bylaws, we aren't required to take a vote and to take a position. So I think what I'm going to do is ask the executive board I'm going to make a motion for the executive board. There are 7 of us, for us to vote right now, because we haven't done it before, if we want to take a vote on this issue based on who's in this meeting right now, because it was on the agenda, so we can do that. We're not required to take a vote of the people in attendance, but we can. So if you're and also keep in mind that the question that the Planning Commission is asking us right now, it's just the one variance. Just there's not enough frontage on a road to do this. Anthony, what do you want to say? I'm going to make a motion that the executive board votes on whether or not we take a vote of the members.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify. Are we asking if we are going to vote to say if we approve the PUD as it stands, or what exactly are we?
No, I'm going to say the executive board is going to take a vote on whether or not we poll the residents to take a position, yes or no, on this. Do you remember on the last ADU?
Yeah.
And if you're a member of the executive board, speak up so you can say what you want to do.
I was just more clarifying, because it sounds like a lot of the objections are to something that kind of falls outside of the PUD process. So I'm just wondering if we should maybe vote on 2 separate things: the PUD process itself, and then also on the seismic issues.
No, Anthony, what I'm going to ask just for the 7 of us in the executive board to say whether or not we want to poll the officers on, should we take a vote yes or no on this project? And you want to say, should we take a vote yes or no on 2 separate questions on this?
Let's just go ahead and do it how you're doing it.
Okay, so the executive board, you know who you are. Do you want to, do you guys want to put it in the chat or raise your hand or something like that? There are only 7 of us. So maybe I'll do a roll call. Should I do a roll call? That's my motion. I'm going to do a roll call to see if we are going to take a position on this, if we're going to poll the membership on a position on this. Okay, that's my motion. Does anybody?
Amy, I'd love to discuss it for a quick second to see if any of the officers have a question about what we're hoping to achieve with that.
Okay.
I guess, so the last time we did take a poll for the development off of Foothill.
Right.
And so I guess what prompted us to take a poll on that, but not for an ADU?
Well, when we discussed it in our executive meeting, we decided not to poll for position on the ADU.
Yeah, and so.
But we didn't even consider whether or not we should for the, I think I just decided to.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Are we trying to standardize, or do we just want to make it subjective? We do it case by case is what I'm trying to ask.
I think let's standardize it starting right now. Can we do that? So in the future, we'll know that every time we're discussing an issue from Planning Commission, we'll know that we need to take an executive board vote whether or not to take a membership vote.
Okay, so then if I vote in favor of polling people now, does that mean I need to vote in favor of polling for every ADU? That also
No,
counts
that
too?
would, I say on a case by case basis. Every case
Okay.
that's brought in front of us, we say, do we take a membership vote or not?
Okay.
On ADUs, on variances, on, and this would just fall inside that. So
Yes.
that would be my motion, is that we're going to, for this specific issue, as the executive board, vote on whether or not we want to poll the group. I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't want to, but.
Amy, I will second your motion.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call. Hold on, I'm gonna make up a roll really quick. Is Emily here?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Nope.
Does anyone want to just go ahead and offer up a vote?
Yes, I vote for it.
Vote for polling the membership, Diane?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I vote for polling.
Dennis?
I vote no for polling because I think it's so complex. There's no way that we can educate the whole membership to the extent that we're educated at this point, and it's a very gray area for me.
Okay. Brooke?
I vote for polling.
Anthony?
I'm going to be with Dennis, just strictly because I think it's the issues that are being raised aren't necessarily surrounding the PUD process. So just for that reason, I'm going to say not to. It doesn't mean that I'm for or against this in any way. It's just, I don't think the concerns that were raised have anything to do with the PUD process. It's more of like a structural concern and a building concern.
Okay, Mark?
I also agree with Dennis. I think, you know, at first glance, I like the look of the construction. It looked like of course, that's a subjective thing, but you know, hearing from Jonathan about the structural concerns, I just feel like we need more information. So I'm also against. I'm not necessarily for or against the project, but I think from a seismic standpoint, I just think that more vetting should be done.
So are we saying that we want more vetting and then we would vote for polling, or are you saying no, period?
No, this is a chance to ask the memberships to vote.
Yeah, I would just say I'd hate to shoot down a project that potentially doesn't have any issues. I mean, I don't know if it does or not. I just don't think we have the information to do that. And if there are no geological issues, I don't want to be shooting down a project that wouldn't have an effect on the property. So I think if we can get more information on the geological impacts to the surrounding buildings, at that point, I'd be more comfortable to take a position.
Yeah, I concur with that.
Okay, that's a 3-3. And oh, there are 8 of us, right? But Emily's not here.
Emily's gone. So there are 7 in attendance.
So
you're the tiebreaker, no pressure. Amy, what exactly are we polling though? I understand where Mark and Anthony and Dennis are saying as far as we're not approving or disapproving of the project, right? We're simply polling on 2 different issues about the project.
So this question is whether or not we ask all of the people who are here, are you in favor of this project or not? Because those are kind of up and down vote, I think, is what you can give, where we, you know, said 88 people were voted against the other one and 12 for. I think that considering that what we say does not make or break this project, if we say the East Bench Community Council was opposed for these reasons, or the vote of the membership was opposed for these reasons, it it doesn't make or break this project. You know what I mean? Does it, Kelsey? Is there a, if we say no, does the planning commission say no?
Not necessarily. So the community council input would be provided to the planning commission and they would analyze that. You're also able to speak for 5 minutes at the planning commission, and you
Right.
can go over the concerns that you heard, as well as whether or not you took a poll and what that outcome was.
Okay, so I'm going to say yes. I think we should poll the people that are in attendance at this meeting to say there were 45 people. There were 40 people in attendance, and however many were opposed and however many weren't. Because we also have time to explain that answer, to say that there was concern about what would the geotechnical report look like, and there's not a later on date for these neighbors to give their answers. So I'm going to say yes. I think we should poll people.
Amy,
So-
can we make the poll more powerful by making it more specific about X% of the population polled were concerned about, and list 2 or 3 of the major issues, or X% that were polled want a geotechnical study?
I think we're going to do an up and down, kind of like, I think we're just going to do an up and down like we did with the lamplighter, because I think we do have some precedent with that. But then we can explain these are the specific concerns, and there's worry that there's not another. And then every single person here should get on the website and make your own complaint. And if you want to sue the city, you're welcome to. I'm not voting on that or not. I'm actually in favor of this project, and the fact that the only thing that we are supposed to consider is, given the frontage requirements, should they be able to build something there? Something. That's the consideration that we're supposed to be giving right now. So I'm going to vote for this project, because I don't think that the frontage requirement, which is the question that we're being asked right now, is enough to stop it. Because I think that the same way that Jonathan's talked to brilliant people in the mayor's office, and a good attorney answer, and Jamie, who's doing a good job in the mayor's office, and the planner who knows the answers, the same way the city has employed good engineers and good plan readers and that kind of stuff. And they're going to continue to do their jobs. Like Ed said, there's 5 more steps. So at any rate, though, does anybody know how to set up a poll at this point?
I'll try and set it up. I have it. What's the question you want me to put in the poll?
So the question is, are you in favor of the variance that's being requested for this planned unit? Are you in favor of the variance that's been requested from the planning division? Because that's what we're asked, you guys. No one's asking us to become experts in earthquake and all of that kind of other stuff. And you can vote for whatever reason you want to. You can vote yes or no, whatever it is. But the question is, are you in favor of this planned development that's being proposed? I don't think I'm biased, but I do have an opinion. So I think people have shared their opinion.
Amy, I think I misunderstood what you just barely said, because the question that we're voting on is the variance for the frontage, not the project as a whole. I personally am against the project, but that's not what we're asking.
So what I'm saying is, just the same way you can vote in the election booth for anything that you want to, for whatever reason you want to, you can vote here for whatever reason you want to. The question I'm sorry, this meeting is so long and it started late and people have left, and it's not ideal. It's not ideal at all. And I'm sorry for that. But let's see, let me pull up the letter from Kelsey.
You don't have to do a poll though, Amy, and you don't even have to say that. You could say that the council has some concerns. Here's our concerns, and here's our concerns. There's no need for a poll. You have a list of concerns.
Right. So Dan, I understand that, but we just voted whether or not to take a poll.
Oh, okay.
So the executive board voted to take a poll. So
Okay.
I think we should do that.
We did, but to Brooke's point, those are two different questions. I would be fine polling on several questions if that would be more, I don't know, effective in the long run, if we can be more clear on what concerns are. Because like Brooke was pointing out, what you were asking specifically about the variance, I don't
Well, the
think that's
question
what
that
issue
the question
for
we asked on
today.
Lamplighter was, are you in favor of this project as it's proposed? That was the question.
But Amy, Lamplighter didn't have the potential for serious structural
Who's to say
concerns.
this one does, Mark?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that this one does. It may or it may not. But if it does, I mean, that impact is, I mean, they're both gonna have major impacts, but that, I mean, that could.
So what I want to say is people who voted against Lamplighter may very well have voted against it because it ruined their view. And that may be their only issue. So you might vote for this project because it doesn't ruin your view, and that's your only issue. But the question is just thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you think that the East Bench Community Council should support this project the way it's been presented?
Hey, that's not the question you
That's a
asked.
different question. I know.
Yes.
I'm working into it. I'm coming into it.
Okay, I trust you.
I want to finish this so we can go move on. But it's on the agenda this month. Brooke, Kelsey, when's the hearing? When is the hearing, Kelsey?
There's no hearing scheduled yet.
So it's not in the next 45 days. Or we could vote on this again next meeting.
Yeah, it can't be within 45 days.
Right. You have to hear from us first.
Yeah, yep. And so
okay, should we do that instead? Okay, let's hear executive board. Should we like focus the question, decide what we want to vote on? Would you guys all hate it to come back next time? I promise we'll start at 7. We'll have the question out to you so you'll know how to vote. Brooke, what do you want to say?
I move that we table this vote to next meeting.
Okay.
That we put it on the agenda. We have already taken the vote as an executive committee to poll the membership.
Okay.
There's nothing I don't think that prohibits us from tabling this to next meeting. This feels like very panicked.
It does kind of, I know. Because the meeting started late, because the library messed us up, you guys. We're not even on the right meeting. Let's hear from some people who live there. Martha, are you okay with coming on this meeting next month and voting on it next month? Is that okay with you? Jonathan, is that okay with you? Does that sound better? And I apologize that this meeting was messed up. That it stinks for everybody.
Well, I'm kind of discouraged.
Sorry, I had to step away.
Go ahead, Martha, go ahead.
I'm kind of discouraged because I think this has a major impact on us, and it's not just a flippant view. It's whether it's going to slide down and take the condos, buy it down. The other thing is we have a little cul-de-sac with like 5 driveways going into it. I mean, there's so many things that go on. So why don't they put a road in someplace else if they're going to do it? We're a one-way street up here. You get in here and you can't get out. I wish I'd noticed that when I bought, actually, because we have an earthquake. I got to go down the hill where they're building. So, but I'm really discouraged that that our voices aren't being heard. We have a lot of people, and there are people written letters to Kelly. I'm just kind of discouraged in the East.
No, Kelsey, you know what, Martha, I get that. I felt like that a lot of times when we're doing planning issues. There's a planning training that's coming up, so we all should probably go to it so we know how you can make a difference and what the issues are. The question right this second is, would the people that are concerned about this come back next month on April 21st and vote on this for or against the project, whatever question we come up with? And we would come up with a question before the meeting so you'd know. But we also have in our bylaws, you have to be in attendance at a meeting in order to vote.
Of course we'll vote.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if that's our only option, yeah, because
the other option is
late and people have dropped off. But I'm really, what's our timing issue on this? I think you as executive committee should hear that the people who are here are against this project. I think some of you are against a process. But I really, it has so many implications, and I think V put together some amazing stuff. It's it's not just a view or not a view.
Right.
It goes right under Oak Crest Gardens foundation. We don't want them sliding down the hill, so I don't know. But
I'm the only person who's expressed. I'm the only person.
Delay.
Okay, I'm the only person that's expressed an opinion whether for or against this project. I'm the only person. The rest of the board haven't made their decision. Jonathan, can you come back next month and vote?
Yes, no, and I'll what I just want to put it out there is if there's any opportunity, anybody on this call that didn't have some pause, I spent, not a list, I know Kelsey and all you the amount of effort I put in to try to unearth this. And if you guys, you're here on this call because you're interested citizens and you're trying to figure out the right way to do things. And if you didn't find the evidence that I presented to be compelling, then let me know what else you need. I mean, if that's not the thing, like I kind of proved that we don't fully understand the mechanisms about how this thing's working. I put some, it's a little bit of a spotlight on some flaws in this process. And if this is the only public input and you're just saying, well, there's these technicalities and there's this and that. So I'll put it out there. I will share my and my ideas with anybody in the community that will listen. And
okay, everybody, do you have, Jonathan they have a change.org.
I put that on the chat.
That was on the chat. Did everyone see it? Who wants to see it? Where you can go and see the petition that he's written up and questions and that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm gonna call it right now. I'm gonna say I'm going to accept the motion that we vote on this next time. Anthony? That we'll ask the membership to vote next time?
Yeah, I second.
And
I think that'll allow Jonathan to get time to put together more information.
Yeah, voting next time?
I agree with that.
Count me in.
Dennis, we're voting next time?
Yep.
Katie? Yeah? Brooke?
Aye.
Yes. Okay, and me, I say yes too. So sorry, guys, you're gonna have to come back next time and give your thumbs up or thumbs down. We'll give you a more specific question to vote on next time, although I think this conversation was helpful. If you have more questions, go ahead and send them to me or send them to Kelsey. Kelsey, do you like answering questions? Is that a thing that you do? No, I mean, like, seriously, if somebody sends you a question, will you answer it? Or are you just supposed to be taking comments?
No, I will get an answer for you. I try to be as responsive as possible. Sometimes it does take me maybe a day to get back to you.
Oh, Kelsey, you've been awesome. And
my girlfriend is actually jealous of my email relationship with Kelsey the last
Kelsey, Kelsey, you're awesome. We've been through this before. The process is a little bit annoying. Sorry, not your fault. You're a good planner, but it is. So come back next month. And I apologize for the problems with this meeting. We won't have that next month. The meeting will be much shorter. It'll be 40 minutes next month. Everybody's on my list who wants to be. We don't have any substance. That hurts my feelings, but I mean, we try. The truth is, last time, I mean, let's be serious. How many of these people were on the meeting when we talked about Lamplighter? How many, did any of you vote? Some of you did. Probably not the majority of the 34 people that are left. People have a specific, they're concerned about a specific project. So this group is of course going to be concerned about this project. That's the way that it goes. There are 8 of us that come to every meeting. Otherwise, people come to the projects that they're concerned about. But don't think that I'm not concerned about this because it's not my neighborhood. I'm going to vote on every single project. It is in my neighborhood. It's not my backyard. At any rate. Martha, I know you are. I see you. I remember you at the library. Maybe we'll be able to go back there someday. Okay, that's it. This meeting is over. Oh, wait, I have a couple more things I have one more thing to show you really quick because I want everybody to do these things. I want you to, oh, here's a real estate snapshot. I'll email it to you. I want you to go to Fix the Bricks and see if your building is not going to survive in an earthquake.
It was.
You've got to do something about it. You've got to bring up that issue. It needs to be fixed because it can be. I want every single one of us to survive an earthquake, whether or not there are 12 new neighbors down the hill or not. I want us to survive earthquakes, so look into it. Sign up to get the COVID vaccine because I want you to survive the next 2 seasons. And you can get a free gun lock from Salt Lake City Police Department because I don't want anyone to be shot accidentally or inadvertently or on purpose. So go get gun lock. That's it. Thanks, guys. Come back next month. Send an email to ebcc.chair@gmail.com if you don't get emails from me, and I'll send them to you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, guys.
Good job,
I'm gonna
Amy.
stop recording now.